Hello and welcome to another Writer's Showcase. Today we have a smaller group than usual, not quite as small as last week's group, but what can you do? We're also live on Twitch if you want to watch us there. I'm just going to start dual broadcasting since might as well. Anyway, let me bring in my wonderful guests. First off,
Deep stuff. Afternoon, by the way.
afternoon, my friend. Afternoon.
For half a second there, I wondered if I'd lost sound.
Oh. Oh. Your sound is actually gone. Let me turn you on Twitch or something. Twitch or YouTube, because I can't hear you for whatever reason. But for whatever reason, and for whatever reason, it's not going.
Weird.
Oh. Okay. Okay, I could hear you on Twitch. That's weird.
Hello, hello, hello. Now,
Hello?
am I audible?
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, now you are audible. Okay, cool.
On YouTube, though. Am I audible on YouTube?
And you're audible on Twitch. Yeah. Okay, we're good. We're all good. We're all good in this hood. If I can hear you, you're probably audible on YouTube. But anyway, let's bring in our final guest, Mr. Carl Saylor.
Hey folks, I'm back.
Hello. So,
Greetings.
Carl had a little bit of a time constraint, so he will read first, the Balerion, and then me. Sound good?
Let's see. Okay, I'm probably going to go off AFK in about 45 minutes, but we'll see how that happens.
Well, if we do like 20 minutes per person, I think that you should be able to read it fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I can cut it short if necessary.
I don't think you'll read for 20 minutes for significantly.
It's okay. I'm just over 2,000 words, so it should be fine.
Okay.
Alrighty. Okay, good.
Alrighty. You have the floor.
All right. So, making my return. This is another continuation of Shenna's story of the Waters of Akra. Also, seriously, before I start, you guys have got to check out the Waters of Akra section on Discord. Balerion has just been killing it with those fan fictions. I am loving the adventures of evil Shenna.
My blushes, Watson.
Seriously, man, you really got talent. I tell you that much. Anyways, this is chapter 9, Sneaking Out. Sparks danced in the braziers as the lights came on, bathing the refectory in red and black shadows. Shenna glanced up at the clock on the wall. The small hand was between the 7 and the 8, and the larger hand between the 9 and 10. So 7 hours and 48 minutes. 7:48 of the evening. That was 12. Was it 12? Yes, 12. 12 more minutes until lights out at 8. She was running out of time. At least now she knew how to tell time. It had taken almost 2 weeks of careful observation and eavesdropping, but she'd figured it out in the end. And with the exception of a single, carefully measured question to Elira, more for the purposes of checking her work than anything else, she had managed it all by herself. Now, if only she could puzzle out the meaning of these word symbols in the same way. For 2 weeks now, she had carefully duplicated line after line in her copybook, with only the barest scraps of meaning revealing themselves to her. She'd long since given up asking Magister Parnell for any clarification, and she hadn't yet worked up the courage to ask one of the other students for assistance. Then again, if she didn't ask soon, it might be too late. Of course, that only made her even more reluctant to ask for help. What if it already was too late? Her other courses were only slightly better. Where Magister Parnolf's classes took the form of plodding lectures, Magister Forlek's mathematics lessons were fast-paced and dynamic, with barely any time to absorb what was being taught before moving on to the next topic. Forlek appeared to take a particular delight in ambushing students with questions when he thought they weren't paying attention to him. To be fair, Shenna had learned quite a bit from his teaching style, although most of it was concerned with how to make it look like she was paying attention when she in fact had little idea of what was going on. The lessons on mystical theory were worst of all. Magistress Renellith didn't criticize harshly or try to trap her students with ambush questions. She just wrote on the chalkboard, and nothing else. Every now and again, Magistress Renellith would turn to the class and ask, "So, what does this teach us?" or some other general question, to which a handful of students would respond all at once, and Magistress Renellith would nod and continue on, once she determined that the resulting mess of sound contained the answer she was looking for. Shenna may as well have slept through the past 2 weeks of lectures for all the good it did her. She looked back down at her copybook and noticed that some of her more recent pen strokes were looking a little thin. Her pen was running out of magic. Because of course it was. Just wonderful. Was the administration office still open at this hour? If so, she could probably get there, recharge her pen, and get back before lights out at 8. Would it be worth it, though? Elira didn't like Shenna studying late into the night. It might just be better to leave the whole thing until morning. 10 minutes until curfew. The announcement sent a stir through the few remaining students scattered throughout the refectory. Some got up and made their way up the stairs. Others returned to their conversations without any apparent change. Shenna shook her head and returned her focus to her copybook. It probably wasn't worth going to see if she could recharge her pen before curfew. What even was the point of continuing this exercise? What would another 10 minutes of staring at these confounded squiggles and ink blotches really do? She surely wasn't going to stumble across their hidden meaning from that much. Curfew already? Shenna looked up as the boy plopped himself close down by her. They just turned on the lights. Why bother if they're just going off again in a few minutes? The boy looked close to Shenna's age, with a mop of untidy red hair that seemed to gleam like burnished bronze in the firelight, and a smooth, round face that dimpled at the cheeks as he lazily chewed one of the last pieces of flatbread. He was a fellow student, as evidenced by his white initiate's robes. Shenna had seen him around the magisterium grounds, though she didn't know his name. She hardly knew any of the names of her fellow students, and those that she did know she had learned from overhearing conversations. Shenna got the distinct feeling that if she had heard this boy's name, she would definitely remember it. His soft brown eyes wandered over to Shenna. "You don't mind if I sit here, do you?" he said awkwardly. "Of course," Shenna said, quickly looking away. "I mean, of course not. That is, I don't mind you sitting there. It's all right. She tugged anxiously at the collar of her robe. The humidity was starting to get to her. Yes, it was definitely the humidity. Certainly not the handsome young man she had just been staring at. She stole a quick, darting glance back in his direction. Yes, he was still there, and just as handsome as before. She might need to look again soon to make sure if he was still there. Hey, the boy scooted a little closer. I know you. Do you? Shenna said, a little more nervously than she would have liked. Yeah, you're the new girl, the boy said. The one who showed up late to the course cycle. Yes, that's me, Shenna nodded along. So, the other students were talking about her, but not talking to her. What sort of rumors were making the rounds, exactly? You settling in all right here? The boy said, continuing to munch on his flatbread. Shenna looked down at her copybook. I'm managing as best I can, given the circumstances. The boy laughed a soft, gentle laugh, like a soft spring breeze stirring an ancient forest. I remember those copybooks. You know, the Magisterium hasn't bothered to update them in almost a century. I still can't believe I ever learned anything from those old relics. I hope they're not causing you too much trouble. I'm making progress, Shenna said, trying to present an air of confidence. Although I wouldn't object if you were to offer any help, that is. Asking for help was always easier once you got the conversation started. Maybe I could, the boy said. Yeah, I don't think I got your name, by the way. I'm Shenna. Just Shenna? Just Shenna. Nice to meet you, Just Shenna. I'm Gareth. Just Gareth? The boy laughed again and shook his head. Fine, Gareth and Casavan, bright banner of Teshin and Havar. But please, to you, just Gareth. His full name gave Shenna a moment's pause. Elira's full name had come in just the very same format. So, Shenna ventured, does that make you... Nobility, yeah, Gareth said. My family owns a couple of estates to the south, along the River Sarn. It's one of the old houses, you see. I see, Shenna nodded. The way he spoke, Gareth didn't seem particularly interested or impressed by it. Where Elira would babble away like a happy little fountain of words, Gareth could have been a farmer in a tavern discussing a recent spell of bad weather. Family tradition to send the second son to the Magisterium, and so here I am, Gareth said. What about you, Just Shenna? I was apprenticed to a village witch in a small town along the Red River, Shenna began, and she would have continued her tale had she not been interrupted by the announcement of 5 minutes until curfew. This time, the warning took immediate effect. The air grew thick with the sound of benches scraping across stone as every remaining student in the refectory picked themselves up and shuffled away to the dormitories. Yeah, right. Curfew. Gareth nodded. Slipped my mind, I guess. It's all right, Shenna said, gathering up her copybook. We can meet tomorrow at breakfast if you want to help me with my... Wait, hold on just a moment, Gareth said, quickly getting to his feet and glancing about the refectory. He then leaned forward and began to whisper. Wait a few minutes after lights out, and then come find me in the boys' dormitory, floor 2, room 20. Floor 2, room 20, Shenna repeated. She could find it easily enough. She knew enough of numbers at least to know which direction to start counting from. Right, Gareth said, reaching a hand into his robe. Also, take this, he said, pulling out a small purse. What is it? Shenna asked as she took the purse, feeling a small, vaguely rounded object inside. It'll help you find the way, Gareth said with a wink. See you in a bit. And with that, he turned about and slipped out of the refectory. Shenna found her dormitory chamber dark when she returned. Elira was already sound asleep, as was her habit. She slept early and awoke late, rest being the best means to assure the preservation of one's beauty, or so she claimed. Shenna carefully sat down atop her bed, not bothering to remove her robe or set down her copybook. She would only be here for a few more minutes anyhow. Shenna took Gareth's purse and emptied its contents into her palm. She couldn't make out the details in the gloom, but she could feel the object well enough. Solid and smoothed and cool to the touch, like a stone worn down by a river. A sentimental gift, to be sure, but how exactly was a pretty rock supposed to help her find the way? Then slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, a soft silver luminescence began to glow from within the stone. It didn't flicker like magic in a crystal, but it remained steady as a beam of moonlight. Shenna looked about her chamber, wondering as the shadows pulled away in reverence. She could see Elira lying in a contorted heap of sheets and pillows, both curtains tightly drawn and clasped, and in the far corner, the skeletal half of her crow's head, gleaming like ice as it fluttered in with a songberry in its beak. "Look," Shenna whispered, holding up the glowing rock as the crow delivered its nightly present. "Isn't it amazing? Gareth gave it to me." The crow looked at Shenna with a quizzical tilt and sat down to begin preening its feathers. It didn't even look at the stone. Shenna shrugged and gave the bird a fond scratch on the head. "I'll introduce you to Gareth sometime." Shenna slipped silently off her bed and crossed to the door. A peek into the hallway beyond revealed only darkness. Shenna raised the glowing stone to illuminate the corridor. The braziers sat cold and dark, and no figures were visible. Perfect. Before setting out, Shenna tiptoed back to the trunk with her clothes. Carefully, with the silver stone held between her teeth, she opened the chest and switched out her white robes for her black skirt and purple blouse. A darker outfit would better hide her from unfriendly eyes. Besides, it would make a better first impression on Gareth. Finally, she slipped off her moccasins, sacrificing comfort for silence. Now fully prepared, she tucked her copybook under one arm and crept out into the hallway with the glowing stone to lead the way. She glided down the corridor like a shadow among shadows, stopping only for a moment to knot up her skirts around her knees lest the whisper of silk across stone give her away. She carefully descended the spiral stairs to the refectory, now dark and silent, and stalked into the hedges beyond. The boys' dormitories were located on the opposite side of the magisterium grounds, in the corner behind the administration offices. Shenna had heard alternating explanations for this. Some said it was a courtesy to the girls to be able to reach the refectory without being exposed to the elements. Others claimed that it was to keep the boys close to the administrators in case they got rowdy, as boys tended to do. And still others simply shrugged and said that it was just there because it wasn't somewhere else. Whatever the explanation, Shenna slipped along the north wall and made her way silently to the corner of the far wall where a small grove of hedges concealed the entrance to the boys' dormitories. Shenna felt a tingle of excitement as she slipped into the darkened foliage. She wasn't supposed to be here. She'd overheard stories about girls sneaking into the boys' dormitory, and boys doing likewise. Sometimes it was the same student doing the telling who had done the sneaking. They even boasted about what kind of punishments they'd been given when they were caught. Indeed, being found was almost better. It gave one notoriety. Shenna caught herself grinning as she rounded the last corner and stepped into an open space before the walls. A spreading tree stood at the center of a small courtyard, with an arching doorway beyond in the corner of the walls, with a flight of spiral stairs visible within. And just before Shenna reached it, a light inside, red like the lanterns. Were the lights still on? It was coming closer, growing brighter. Shenna panicked and darted into a narrow corridor. Her heart was pounding in her ears and sweat was pouring down her forehead. Would she be found? How would they punish her if they caught? Would they kick her out? She watched as the lantern emerged into the courtyard, and Shenna noticed that she was still holding the silver glowing stone where she was clearly visible. She frantically tucked it into her shirt. And I think we'll stop there for the moment.
Interesting cliffhanger.
Balerion, we're done. You can unmute yourself now. Is Balerion is he AFK?
No, I think he died.
No, I didn't die. I thought you were still reading. What happened?
Oh, I had a nasty cliffhanger.
Yeah, I caught that. The cliffhanger. Yeah. Someone laughed. And it was presumably Gareth is actually evil.
No, that comes later.
Oh, okay. No spoilers. Half a second. We're right back.
Yeah.
Okay. I like this nobleman guy that Shenna's definitely not having a crush on.
Yep, definitely not. Yep, he's gonna be pretty significant for a while.
I did hear the cliffhanger, but then suddenly people were talking my name and like, what's happening?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, while we've got the wait, I'm sorry, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, I could potentially read some of the fanfics that Balerion has been putting together.
Okay.
Yeah, the most recent ones, it's basically the same one. It's not too long.
Yeah, they're related to the others from the alternate universe where Shenna is from the bourgeoisie.
She got corrupted by the class system. You see.
Yeah.
She's become corrupted.
Mm-hmm. So here it goes. Shenna looked with satisfaction upon the marble inscription, Shenna der Gotha von unser Kapital Mussolini Magisterium, on the main building. It had only cost 500 gold lath, which was nothing considering how much she'd made from predatory lending. Respected magistrals, about that incident at the meeting, said a chesty voice as Parnolf accosted her. Immediately, Shenna's crow flew in and pecked Parnolf's eyes out. The crow had false consciousness and didn't realize it was part of the proletariat, and that Shenna was exploiting its surplus value. Though, to be fair, Parnolf had false consciousness too. Shenna waved a hand lazily. Oogie boogie woogie, she chanted, and the pain from Parnolf's eye sockets instantly went away. That's resplendent magistress to you. You are only 5th Zoo, and I am 1st. And if you ever dare disrupt my meeting again, the pain will return for good. Yes, resplendent magistress. Shenna waved Parnolf away and headed for the nearby shopping district, taking great care to step on the poor. It was the only thing to keep them in their place. There she met Elira, whose dress was almost as stunning as Shenna's. Darling, why did you step on all those people? Wondered Elira. What people? I only saw some filthy welfare parasites. You're so harsh, darling, said Elira. Not every poor person is a dangerous revolutionary, surely. You don't know anything about it, sniffed Shenna. Anyway, I got your text. What did you have in mind? Let's go shopping and give away our clothes that we got just last week, because conspicuous consumption is too, said Elira. Very well, but I'm burning my clothes so my inferiors can't get them, said Shenna. We can depose the council and assume absolute power tomorrow. Elira tittered. You're so whimsical, darling. I love owning the means of production, don't you? Remarked Shenna with a smile as they got into the palanquin. Darling, is predatory lending really a means of production? Wondered Elira. Shenna shrugged. Close enough. Let's go. So they went and did some conspicuous consumption. It was a riot. Don't say riot to Shenna, though.
You missed your calling.
Who did?
You
did.
Balerion.
You missed your calling, Balerion.
I probably did. Which calling is that?
Parody writing.
Well, I don't know if I missed my calling. I've done plenty of parody writing.
No, I mean, you should have been making money off of this. It would have been very, very, very profitable.
Well, yeah, I guess mine tends to be a little obscure, but I've noticed that published parodies are actually not always very good.
Well, taking into consideration that they're not very good, that means that the market is open for good stuff. It's why Comicsgate is making a lot of money.
So how much money do you think the rabbit thing would make?
If you got a good artist doing the cover and you obscured some of the names and maybe changed some of the plot, I think if you posted that on Amazon, you could make about like $300 bucks maybe.
Yeah, the names might be kind of obscure already.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing about it is Amazon, the only way to really kind of right now, the only way is to self-publish, because publishers now require you to have your own built-in audience before they'll publish you in order to justify publishing you.
Yeah, that's kind of a bit of a vicious circle then.
So the only way
Yep.
to be successful as an author is to have already been successful as an author.
Pretty much, yeah. So even if you get an agent, you're kind of screwed a little bit. You're still a little bit screwed unless you have some measure of an audience built in, because so many people are writing books, and a lot of the and the publishers don't have time for everybody, so they want to know that, oh, you have a pre-existing demographic that you can get. So basically, the main way is just to self-publish and try to use social media and other avenues and other forms of networking, and try to have your fans slowly bring other people in, because they're not going to just, even if you have an agent and an editor, they're not going to accept your stuff.
Yeah, that's yeah. The thing being that you're not likely to make the best sellers list from Amazon, are you?
No, but if you put out large amounts of content, you will slowly accrue an audience, and your passive income will come in. Like currently, off of 15 books, I'm making about $32 a month.
Oh, that's globs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my current plan is basically put 5 books out a year for the foreseeable future on Amazon, and see what I can do about increasing that number as time goes on.
It's a bit awkward when you spend several years writing a book. You can't when you spend several years writing a book that doesn't exactly translate to big screaming sales on Amazon.
No.
No, you need to put out small pieces of content. You need to put out lots of content on Amazon in order. Like there are some authors who've been working only for about 10, 15 years, and they put out 150 books.
Hmm.
So the model is basic, and ironically, the most popular genre is romance fiction because it's both low effort to write and low effort to read. It's basically the equivalent of a turn your brain off in a film.
And I'm rubbish at romance.
Yeah, me too.
It seems like most writers are weirdly bad at romance. I don't know why.
I mean, even Brando Sando's not very good at it either, to be perfectly frank.
Brandon Sanderson's not good at it. Robert Jordan's not good at it either. George R. Martin's okay at it.
He doesn't do much of it.
Yeah. David Eddings is fine, I guess. Sort of, not really. Yeah, it's and Twilight's not romantic.
No comment.
Yeah, Twilight's not romantic. Twilight's a psychotic, sociopathic, narcissistic, psychologically abusive relationship. That's not romantic.
But with Candlelight,
They don't even have candlelight, as far as I remember.
oh, in that case, no.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, Count Balerion, it is your turn.
Okay. We're ready for some communist rabbits, and this begins. Yes, this begins even more this begins even more unintelligibly than usual, because it begins with a fake German Valley Girl seagull. So, half a second.
I know exactly what you're parodying, but that's amazing. Okay, go for it, dude.
Sorry, I was just grabbing some water, so I missed that last comment.
Oh, I was just laughing because fake Valley Girl seagull.
Fake German.
Amazing. Fake German Valley Girl seagull sounds amazing. I'm excited.
Okay, so the seagull is part of the plot to get the does out of there. He's going to distract the rabbits, the communist rabbits. So this is the bit where they're going to try to rescue the rabbits. Then they have to put it off. Then they, I think in this chapter they end up rescuing them. But anyway, that's the basic plot. They're trying to rescue these does, these lady rabbits, from the communist warren, so they can have them to themselves. And they're also rescuing a dissident. Okay, Doden, what they do now? Says Kmart. Well, first we gotta deploy the rabbits near the arch under the bridge thing tonight. And is that boat still there? Because if not, we're screwed. And second, these robots, they're sentries. You gotta attack them and do offensive stuff to them, says Bigwig, who knew strategy stuff because he was an officer. Cool, there other rabbits say you way Roxanne Doden on Blooper. He's the guy who says all the funny stuff. He says bring in one. Here, one, babe, for the other robots and two for him, because rabbits are totally patriarchish, dude, says Kmart. And then Captain Chevy turns up and Kmart flew away. How come you hanging out with that bird, Taylor? Says Chevy. I was doing silflay, that's feeding, and I'm a tough guy. I'm not scared of birds, says Big. It's dangerous and I'll have to report it. Because that's how the power structures work here, dude. Because the greater good so demands it. So I'm reporting it now, and you and Avon get the marks back in the burrows, says Chevy, and Bug's okay, whatever. And Avon's did you get on with that emo chick? because alfalfa officers are sexist, and he's like, no, I made a mistake, it's not her mating season. And Avon's like, what about the smart chick who talks too much? And Big's like, she tucked away my libido. And Avon's like, bummer, dude. So he hung out for a bit with the other African like hobbits, and so he could like seem like he's integrating into their society and learn how they did their ears and stuff. And he's all ready for the big climactic moment when they all get the dose. And suddenly, Woundwolf goes up to him and says, Taylor, we got to do a private audience. And Big's like, what, dude, sir? And Woundwolf's like, you're just hanging out with the near hind marks, and there's this robot named Grendel. He's a sentry. Did you meet him before? And no, sir, because the temporal nature of our being totally prevents my meeting him before I came here, says Biggie. No, it doesn't. Because we do wide patrols where we go around homogenizing. And he was on one when he saw you run from a fox, says Woundwardhoff. Yeah, I ran away from a fox. So what, sir, dude, says Big. I'm asking the questions because that's the pragmatics of social hierarchy that rules. And you led the fox onto some robots and it killed one, is like Woundwardhoff. Yeah, it was an accident, but probably it would get him anyway, dude, sir, says Big. Pardon me. No, it wasn't. That sucks. That was Molotov, and he's an Alfalfan officer, and he knew how to handle foxes if you hadn't been so dumb, says Woundwardhoff. And Biggie's like, sorry, dude, sir. Okay, and another thing. Captain Molotov was doing espionage to a bunch of foreign robots. What do you know about them, says Woundwardhoff. And Big's like, I don't know nothing. I saw their tracks. They look like total lamers to me. Okay, and that bird thing. That was dumb. Why did you do it? Says Woundwardhoff. I wanted to show Captain Chevy I'm like so like macho and gender role, and I ruled, dude, sir, says Biggie. Okay, but I'm the power structure, so impress me by going with me on patrol and homogenize the robots. Get if you hadn't been blundering into Captain Molotov's way, dude, says Woundwardhoff. I'd majorly like to serve the party and stuff, dude, sir. He's like, Bigwig. Cool. That reminds me. You gotta keep on interrogating the does. I don't care if they're ready to mate or not, or if you got 20 at once, or what sexual mores you violate, so long as their descent is stopped before it so undermines the social order. Dude, now you can go, says Woundwardhoff. Yes, sir, dude. Yes, sir, dude. Is like Biggie. Meanwhile, the other rabbits were waiting for them. Like, whoa, where's Bigwig? Did time and space and like causality and stuff get totally screwed up? Or did the Alfalfans get him because the antithesis, they're like thesis, says Hegel. Like chill, Hegel, raw. That means Chief Dude. Probably he just had to do tactical withdrawal stuff. And we better do withdrawing too and send Kmart for another message tomorrow, said Fiver. And Hazel's like, yeah. Like, is Big okay? I'd be bummed if he isn't, said Pippin. Don't worry. He's fine, and if not, we'll go into Alfalfa myself and do a surgical tactic then, says Hazel. Me too. I want to be one of your commandos, dude, says Pippin. Because rarebits are patriarchal, that makes them militarist. So meanwhile, back in the Warren, back in the communist Warren, like Deredinskaya and Bigwig, what do? We told the does, and that includes Nelly Hee-Haw, and that's the very stupid teenaged Lady Rabbit. And you can't keep secrets in Africa because the flow of information is always going up in power structures and to power structures, and one of their does might be even be a spy, said Hee. Don't worry, I'll be your male protector, because if I run away, my macho image will majorly suck, because aesthetics do stuff to images, says Bigwig. WTF, LOL, exclamation. We don't need male protection. We just need not to be dumb and freak out, but do our strategic tactics. Not that I'm militarist, because that's crap, but the narrative puts you in a screw up, you gotta deconstruct it till it's not screwed up, said Dara Dandelion. Pardon me. There we go. Then while they did Silflay, that's Sweden, and there was ominous thunder, the Hraka guards came up with Blackarov, who looked totally emo, and Big's like, have some clover, dude. That's not allowed, because dissidents are bad, because they mess up the paradigm, said one of the Hraka. Oh, let him have it, Bartzia, dude. This ominous thunder and sound effects soundtrack is a major, bummer for everyone, let alone the prisoner, dude, said the other Hraka. So the Marks went up to Silflay, and they all looked depressed, even Captain Chevy and Avon. But Nelly Hee-Haw was like popping bubble grass, and her t-shirt was all, I rule, OMG. And she's like, WTF, LOL, exclamation. Captain Chevy, dude, you better brace up, because you might get surprised, dude. OMG, those might totally, get LOL, wings and fly, because LOL, because secrets are so, OMG, LOL, faster than a vodka shot. That kind of a fermented Jew that alfalfa robots drink to forget how life under this system sucks. OMG, WTF, LOL, exclamation. And you could argue, pardon me a second, I need to drink after all that. And you could argue she's actually being brilliant, because all the LOLs and exclamation marks and stuff totally obscure the substance, kind of like an anti-discourse, but the alfalfa officers were all trained in her lingo, so that's crap. But she was probably dumb enough to think that's what she was doing, not to mentally challenged, especially since IQ is so exploded, dudes. And I think that will do for the moment.
Oh, man.
I think the Cthulhu is waking up somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean right now.
Oh, good. That was the whole plan all along.
Yeah.
Well, considering the Cthulhu is your doggo.
Well, he's pretty cute. You know, there's a plush Cthulhu doll, right?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah. He's adorable. I've seen him.
Yeah. It's the primary gag in a rather unreliable pop culture commentator named Overlord DVD. part of his gag. He's just super biased and thinks that stuff is very blind to how the industry actually works.
Yeah, well, most YouTube commentators seem pretty biased anyway.
Yeah, this guy's like particularly biased in ignoring actual evidence.
That's also quite popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We try not to over here. We try to look for facts because, at least with Game of Thrones, the facts are generally more disturbing than the conjecture.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Alrighty.
So,
But yeah, that was immensely entertaining, to say the least.
Oh yeah. As much as I could figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen two. I think I've seen one full iteration of Watership Down. And that's the Netflix computer animated show. I have not seen the R-rated bunny horror movie that came out in the 70s.
yeah, there's also a book.
Yeah, I know. I haven't seen the book. I haven't read the book. I've only seen the I've only seen bits of the adaptations. Like
Yeah.
the really, really horrifying 2D animated movie. That movie is horrifying.
Well, the plot's basically the same, I think. I mean, the whole bit about getting the lady rabbits from the war in Ephrafa and rescuing them and all that and and having this rabbit coming as a secret agent. That's all from the
That's all from the book.
yeah.
Since both versions are pretty close adaptations, there's very little that's left out, as far as I'm aware.
And I think the Ephrafa rabbits are the horror part, in the film.
There's other horrifying bits, like when the Warren gets filled in.
Yeah, there was that. I don't remember that very well, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just like 80s PG. We will mess up your child.
Oh yeah, good times, good times.
Yeah, when PG actually meant something.
Reminds me of actually communist rabbits. It reminds me of a joke that I heard a while back about the KGB, the CIA, and French intelligence all trying to determine who is the better intelligence agency. So they all come up with a competition, and what they do is they have a piece of forest, and they release a single white rabbit into the forest, and whoever catches the rabbit first wins. So the CIA goes first, and they immediately set up a network of informants with all the woodland creatures, and they set up surveillance cameras all over the place. 6 months go by, and there's no sign of the rabbit. So the CIA concludes that rabbits do not exist.
Quite right.
French intelligence comes in next. They look for a few weeks, don't find anything, and then burn the forest down because fuck it, the rabbit had it coming. and then it's the KGB's turn. They immediately go in, and 5 minutes later, they come out driving a badly bruised bear in front of them, which is screaming, "Fine, I'm a rabbit. I'm a rabbit."
Kind of like I guess that will happen.
Yep.
Alrighty.
I confess.
Stop hurting me.
Kind of like
Alright,
Stop hanging me by my ears and poking me with sticks.
Stop making me drink this third-rate vodka.
Don't drink vodka, period. It makes your breath smell like sewage.
that do.
Yeah, that's not the only reason.
And it kills your liver.
Yeah,
And it's highly addictive.
it's bad news all around.
Yeah. Alrighty. So I'm just going to be reading about a little over 1,900 words today, and this will kind of be the next piece of the Battle of Seven Suns. We're now into the battle itself. I'm really excited with this one since it's the first climax that I'm reading on this, not literal climax. That would be horrible. Wow, not even a no comment. Dang, I must
What?
be
What?
really.
Sorry, I was distracted. What did you say?
It's the first climax that I've written on screen, not a literal climax. That would be horrible.
Yeah, no comment. There we go.
I see.
Okay.
All right.
I think we're up to 2 this time. Not very many this time so far.
No, it generally it's Setter and Becca. They're the ones that do the no comment or give the no commenting.
Well, and you.
True. Setter does beat me though.
Yes.
By a whole lot.
I don't think Brightness Becca is terribly no comment ish.
True. She's actually like you in a way where I just get reactions out of her.
Yes.
And it's very, very amusing. Like when I do terrible British accents.
No.
Shun the non-believer, Charlie.
Die painfully.
Right, your accent is it's like horrible, innit?
Yeah.
Kill it.
Righto.
Alrighty,
Get on with it then. Get on with it.
Yes, get on with it. Alrighty, I'll start. Erisa directed her hawk over the battlefield, taking careful stock of what was going on. As soon as they were ready, the enemy sent their cavalry barreling toward her. Only human cavalry on horses, but that was as she'd expected. Obviously, they wanted to draw out her mamics with a feint, but half of them attacking would be enough to disrupt the enemy cavalry, enough for her horse to close. There was also a special surprise she had ready to spring as soon as the enemy moved further out onto the plain. Several carefully concealed hatches that had been placed at points where tunnels could be opened and disgorge hundreds of archers and cavalry right behind the enemy. The dwarves had been happy to take Erisa's gold in exchange for their mining, though at a slightly more discounted price than she had imagined. She had sensed a surprising eagerness in the dwarven banker who she had met with all those months ago. Perhaps she could combine forces with them. Her power and their money could open many doors. A surprising turn abruptly occurred when the enemy formation shifted, putting all the elves in the center. What is this? She wondered as she flew over the formation. Something strange was strange here. Why place your mercenaries in prided place at the critical point in the line? It didn't make sense. As the enemy cavalry swooped forward, so did the dragon. Snarling, she pulled her mind away from the falcon and knight to Ares. Attack now! We need them to move further onto the plain if we're to allow our concealed troops to attack them in the rear. Ares nodded and then urged Tantala into the air, the green golden dragon spreading her green-tinged wings and flinging herself upward. As he departed, Ares put Estes' horn to his lips and blew 2 times to sing for their cavalry to attack their enemy. Hopefully that would fox them, and with Tantala providing interference, they wouldn't be able to swoop in with their dragon and incinerate them. Horns called from acorns blasted their challenge as the Centaurian horsemen rushed forward, the heavy cavalry in the center lowering their lances while the horse archers on the flanks began galloping toward the sides on lighter mounts. The Numenorians had seemed to have solely resorted to heavy cavalry until the entire front line split, sheathing their swords and pulling out compact cavalry bows so that they could bombard her front ranks with a volley of arrows. Grimacing, she watched as the enemy drastically weakened her heavy cavalry's initial momentum, allowing Hera's own lancers to crash into the center while her horse archers were struck by the Numenorians with both sword and bow attacks. High above the field, Tantala and Meraxia began the initial testing strikes. fire blasting from the two dragons' mouths as they flapped around each other. Calmly, Orisa turned her attention back to the battlefield. Now that Meraxia was in the air and occupied, Orisa had options. She could either attack the infantry, the cavalry, though that would likely kill a large percentage of her own already engaged troops, or she could join the fray in the sky and team up on Meraxia. A vision flashed before her eyes. A woman forged from crimson fire, atop a steed armed from the fires of Echidna, a black sword in her fist. Without remorse, she raised her weapon, calling a force of orcs with bright red eyes and burning weapons into battle. Tantala and Sisyphan's flames did nothing but spur the monster on as they cut through her men. Even though she gave the signal to her elves to ambush them, they were quickly slaughtered. Horrified, Orisa clutched her chest reflexively. "I need to prevent this," she whispered, "before she unleashes whatever power she has." Rolling her eyes back into her head, she threw her mind into the songbird she'd given to the elves. Without hesitation, she made the bird sing in the prescribed signal. That done, she urged Sisyphan into the sky toward Meraxia. Narcissus felt a horrible fluttering in his gut as Meraxia ducked and wove around her enemy. Both dragons were fast, but Meraxia was clearly older and larger, giving the enemy a speed advantage. However, the enemy clearly wanted to keep Narcissus, or rather Meraxia, away from their troops more than attacking them. Meraxia tried to close with her enemy, drawing on her years of aerial combat, but the other Olden dragons seemed to be able to evade every single slash and snap of the red and black dragon's claws and fangs. Bellowing, the two dragons circled each other, fire blasting from their jaws and suffusing the air like a furnace opening. Snarling, Meraxia shrieked her challenge at her enemy. Just another as another dragon, this one purple and silver, rose into the sky. "Ah, hell!" Narcissus groaned as this new dragon shot toward Hera's lines. Without thinking, he turned Meraxia toward their enemy, nudging his dragon to throw a small blast of fire at the enemy beast so as not to risk killing their own troops. Almost effortlessly, the smaller dragon dodged and turned to blast him with a jet of fire. Unable to dodge, Narcissus reacted instinctively, putting the command to his dragon's mind just before the fire was about to hit him. Her maw opening wide, Meraxia unleashed a torrent of flame at her enemy, swallowing the enemy's stream in an instant. Then she descended on the other dragon, only to have her turn and attack just as the other dragon dropped toward them. Just before the other dragon got to them, Meraxia swerved in the air and lashed out with her whip-like tail, the spikes along its length scratching a few shallow cuts across its chest before it could dodge. Shrieking, the enemy dragon flapped away, then attacked, fire blasting from her jaws. As the three dragons battled in the sky, Captain Gagul stood with the rest of her fist in the reserves, fangs bared and ready to go on the attack. The human cavalry were engaged in the field, while the orcs stood ready to fight. Gagul wished that it could engage the enemy, but she knew it was not her time yet. Shifting from foot to foot, she rolled her shoulder back, enjoying the weight of her broad, spiked shield on her arm, and tightened her grip on her large cleaver-like sword. "When will we join the fighting?" her second, Charash, asked, fangs bared. "When Hera is ready," Gagul growled, smacking her sword against her shield for emphasis. Before Charash could do anything other than open his mouth in response, a strange noise like falling rocks started clattering behind their lines. She turned and only had enough time to raise her shield to block a sword stroke. "Elves!" she yelled, raising her sword and throwing herself into the fray as the rest of the orcs in the rearguard followed. The world became a glorious mess of violence and carnage, spinning steel and flashing sunlight off of the clashing swords. Bellowing a war cry, Gagul spun wildly, backed up by the rest of her orc pack, using their plate armor to deflect strikes from the elven blades and spears. "Form a spear wall!" came the shout. "Swordsmen, hold the lines until the wall forms, then retreat back through the channels to safety." The strategy quickly spread through the ranks as sections of the army began pulling back and forming shield walls. Gagul's part of the plan quickly became brutally simple. Have as many of the rear guard or fight close quarters until the orc pikemen could get into position. On either side, she saw the elven mercenaries that had been moved into the center start to attack the flanks, only had the orcs on either side of the formation slam into and quickly envelop them in a killing field. Grimacing, Gargoyle and her orcs dug in their heels and held the line until finally the horn blow declared the readiness of the pikes. Giving ground slowly, she closed ranks with the other orc packs, locking their shields into a wall, allowing the pikes to move forward and slide their shields through the gaps and toward the enemy. Now that the pikes were in place, the orcs moved backward toward the rows, giving the pikes as much room as they could to maneuver, allowing the orcs not needed in the initial shield wall to start encircling the enemy so that the pikes could turn into the middle ranks into a butcher's yard. Borahar lashed out at all and sundry, barely able to distinguish Satharis cavalry from his own men. Growling, he waved his sword, trying to rally his men as he cut anybody wearing green silk elk that came toward him. The mess of battle was all around him, fear and excitement in equal measure rapidly intensifying as the screams of men and horses grew louder and louder. Weapons broke, saddles snapped, bones splintered, and men died. Blood was everywhere, all over his armor, his horse, his sword. He wasn't the only one so adorned. "Sodding hell! Die, you bastards!" he roared, cutting down an enemy lancer with a powerful hack. Snarling out curses, his eyes darting around, desperately searching for his men, only to see a mess of green against black and red, with several metal-veiled Satharis horsemen in front of him moving in for the kill. "Ah, damn it!" He turned his horse and tried to gallop his way through, but one of the horsemen managed to drive his lance right through his horse's neck, sending him sprawling to the ground. Growling, he flailed around, roaring out curses and other obscenities at the world at large, trying to draw his own men to him. One of the horsemen rode toward him, trying to use his own horse and lance for an advantage, but Borahar smacked the tip aside and slashed the horse's mouth open, causing the animal to scream and fall, blood spraying across Borahar. His rider was crushed under the weight of his animal, just as a group of his own riders rode through the press as another rush of enemies charging toward them. "Here you go, sir," one of his men came up eating a spear horse. Likely its previous owner had been killed in the melee press. "Forward!" one of his captains yelled. "Protect the general!" "We can't move forward," Borahar thought grimly as his men kept on attempting to hold the line. In the distance, he could see thousands of Satharis cavalry moving toward them as the battle kept going. They were apparently sending more cavalry to reinforce what was on the field. Borahar growled in irritation, then pulled himself onto the new horse. Abruptly, he realized he had several slashes on his arm. One puncture wound in his right thigh, and a cut on his side was leaking blood down his leg on the opposite side. "We have to retreat back to our own lines, or else we're going to die here." "Put the fresh troops in the front," he roared. "We need to move back to our own lines." "Where's the damn infantry?" He turned his head to see if any support was coming from his lines. Instead of seeing a united front of Dragonlord infantry, he saw that the line had dissolved into an infighting broken mess, with the elven center crushed between two wings of orc and human infantry. "What the hell is going on here?" Borahar growled as he turned his horse, getting into a pattern of directing his men as opposed to leading them from the front. The retreat was going to be hard fought, but he was not going to allow more of his men to die than needed to. And that will conclude it there.
Well, that's exciting.
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I could mute it a little bit more, actually. There's only like one page left and then the chapter ends.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on. Finish that.
Yeah.
Finish it. Why not?
Go
Yeah.
for it.
The sounds of clashing steel from the rear ranks caused Hera to flinch and turn her horse away from the fighting. "What the hell?" she asked, just as the elves in the center broke ranks and started attacking the flanks of the orcs she placed on either side of them. "The bloody bastards!" Tarash growled as the elves were quickly surrounded and crammed into a killing field. The back ranks of orcs were using their excellent discipline, but the human infantry was surging against the elves, creating several gaps in the allied formation. Thinking quickly, Hera turned to her trusted general. I'm letting you off the leash. I need your abilities in that. She nodded toward the brutal carnage that her rear ranks were rapidly devolving into. We need to clear that mess up before that mess rolls over us. She pointed toward their rapidly retreating cavalry away from the now advancing Sithar's horsemen. And those big suckers, Urgas motioned toward the elephant and marching toward the embroiled cavalry. His eyes flicked to Narcissus and Meraxi as they fought at the red and black dragon in the sky. Abruptly, his eyes widened. Look! He roared. Art is another dragon, this one purple with silver horns and membranes, flew down toward them. Them screaming its challenge. Oh, damn, Hera muttered, watching the enemy advance. The cavalry is moving far in front of the Mammoks, likely to drive her rapidly retreating cavalry off the field, but Hera still had a plan. We need to buy time for the cavalry to retreat and reform, she said, turning Obliterator toward the enemy. Send the Wolf Riders in a pincer movement on our flanks. We need to kill all of those elves before we can move on to defeating the enemy in front of us. She returned her attention to the mess that her cavalry was rapidly devolving into. Give out the order to send out the runts to slow down the enemy's momentum. Yes! Torash growled and put his horn to his lips and pulled a long, harsh note. Immediately, the sounds of several cages opening, along with the howls of wolves, not large enough for an orc warrior to ride, but still large enough to cause significant damage, sounded throughout the battlefield. Rapidly, the front ranks of orcs parted to allow the large wolves to charge through their ranks and race toward the Sitharan cavalry. The enemy horses began screaming in terror and breaking formation. Elephants and mammoks were one thing, but large wolves were another thing entirely. Now that was taken care of, Hera motioned to Torash, who blew 3 notes on his horn and started waving the flag. Immediately, the howls of wolves were accompanied by the sounds of yelling and dying elves as the two halves of the orcs' wolf riders charged into battle. Eluding, Torash ran toward the battle, Urgas glaring after him. Likely because he was jealous of being left out. Why don't you go down there and have some fun with your old friend? Hera remarked, leaning backward in her saddle. I'm fairly sure that at this distance I'll be quite safe. Gritting like a child let loose in a sweep shop, the scarred, tattooed orc ran after his friend, hefting his sword. And that I think will be the conclusion.
Yeah, them orcs do love to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Lots of
orcs and wolf riders and everything.
lots of mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, does anyone get a crisis of conscience later? Because that might be interesting.
Crisis of conscience?
Yeah, conflict and all that.
Regarding what? Like,
does any of them ever say, "Oh, maybe we shouldn't have burnt down all these people" or something at the end?
At the moment, it's going to be a little bit before. There is a slight crisis of conscience at the very, very end of the book, but in the moment, no.
Well, not the moment.
Eventually, yes, there will be some measure of conflict and some measure of crisis of conscience, but that's not until the end.
Okay. And of course, we all know that this is all actually a pro-Trump allegory, am I right?
Yeah, makes
no,
sense.
this is pro-Roman imperialism allegory.
And we know that Meraxia is actually modeled on Trump, but we all knew that. No one's fooled.
I am remarkable Republican 2.0. Except I'm more intelligent and less good looking.
Well, being more intelligent isn't that hard.
Yeah, low bar.
Yeet. Yeah, all I need. Well, so long as I'm more intelligent than Patrick Willems, just write high top films or all of those morons. I think I'm happy that I have not reached the lowest of the low of idiocracy.
Yeah. So anyway, anyway,
Yeah.
yes.
Like, thoughts on the battle? Were you able to follow it? Okay.
I think so.
Mm,
Yeah. It made sense from where I was sitting. Yeah.
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 I mean, as well as when normally falls battles.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. This basically, I think this is actually one of the longest battles that I've ever written, and I tried to like very much go into as many of the little details as I could. Where I think like it's about like the battle itself is about 30 pages, give or take. I'm still not Brandon Sanderson, where I wrote a over. Actually, it might be 40. Yeah, it's about 40 pages. 40 pages total. And we're just barely getting started.
Yeah. Whereas I hardly describe battles at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to get across with it.
Yeah. It was kind of a like one thing that kind of while I was writing this, I actually listened to Joe Abercrombie's The Heroes, where he goes into exhaustive detail about all the aspects of a single battle, like the troop movements, supply chains, and like multiple perspectives across various areas of the battlefield. And I was just like, I kind of want to do something like that. And so I decided to like try to kind of flex my muscles and do a short, relatively like condensed time frame story where the main focus is on this one singular battle that's meant to decide the fate of the this province and the Dragon Lord Empire's control over them.
I think so.
Well, I
I
believe that. Oh, go for it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I had to step away. I wrote a battle that, like, not even really a battle. That took about maybe one or two paragraphs. Not even that long paragraphs.
So you're going with the Lewis approach to battles,
Yeah.
since
I have two battles planned for the Waters of Akra. I know exactly how they're going to be played out, but as Shenna is not much of a warrior, she's very much going to be in the rear, handling all the supply and stuff. But I'm not sure how long it's going to take.
But Shenna sounds a tiny bit like Xena, Warrior Princess. Very tiny bit.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I
Hera
don't know.
is
Maybe
not.
maybe it's evil Shenna stepping on people.
Yeah, uh,
Maybe there's another alternate universe out there where Shenna is a militant feminist.
Maybe she does a class war. Maybe that's what happens. Maybe there's a class war.
that would be amusing. It's funny that you
Well,
bring up.
come back in a year or two, maybe we'll see that.
It's funny that you bring up Xena Warrior Princess in regards to Hera. I think that's very amusing.
Yeah, well, Shenna, but Hera too.
Yeah,
Hera's
no,
actually more like that.
yeah, and she's very much no, burn it to the ground. But not in a crazy way like Evil Danny. It's more Tywin esque than Maegor. Even though Maegor is criminally underrated, it is a king. Bad person. Actually, not bad king.
Yeah. Well, she has reasons. Hera has reasons. Danny didn't have reasons.
Yeah, that's also true. Because not David Benioff, and I actually do research into history.
So he's basically Stalin.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or like I actually don't know the specific Roman general who is like head of the campaign in Israel, but that's kind of what I'm going with. With only instead of like a battle on the plains, instead of like a battle at Masada, it's a battle on the plains, ends with one last ditch effort.
Thou art better than Benioff.
Very, very low bar, but I at least have some measure of skill. He
Don't
doesn't.
mention it.
Thank you. Anyway, my good friends, we must bid you and the chat, i.e., the 1 to 2 people watching us, adieu for now. I think part of the problem is just maybe this is just not a good time to stream anymore now that school has started back up.
Yeah, maybe.
So I don't know what we're going to do to try and maintain the numbers. Maybe the Star Wars stuff will bring it back in. Maybe we could do more Game of Thrones content, as in kind of cover the books, not the show. Since we pretty exhaustively covered the show, there's nothing really more that we can talk about there. Like, as we went through the book, there's pretty much like nothing more to cover about the show, since we went pretty exhaustively through every single season. But now that we have concluded, we will see you guys later. Adios.
Have a riot.
Bye.